And as the Copenhagen conference approaches, emerging nations are concerned about cutting global emissions while trying to grow their national economic development at the same time. But today, experts from India and China say that they think there is a way to accomplish both of those goals. Clean Sky's Dee Bombani was there for today's session. And Dee, I've heard time and time again, there's no silver bullet when it comes to clean energy growth or emissions reductions. That, however, is not what you heard today at the session, right?
No, not at all. If there ever were a silver bullet to do both, reverse climate change and still grow the economies of the developing world, it would be technology. That's what experts from India and China told the Wilson Center today on Capitol Hill. The problem the emerging countries have with cutting emissions from their factories and automobiles is that they say that would stymie the growth of their economies. Now, already GDP growth in both countries is over 8%, but many of the citizens of those countries don't even have electricity. In India, about 400 million people, more than the U.S. population in total, don't have power. Today, Dr. Anuradha Ganesh, head of the world-renowned Indian Institute of Technology's Energy, Science and Engineering Department, said the school is boosting research to develop cost-effective renewables, energy-efficient devices, and emerging technologies like nanoscale applications that would bring power to poor rural areas, areas without transmission, and areas where kerosene is used to cook and light the indoors. Ganesh said developed countries need to have different goals, but each country can and is doing its part, and India is leading in some of the world's most advanced energy technology.
There is enough research going on in India, okay? We can actually work as equal partners. We must remember that now. Gone are those days when we were really struggling, okay? Because we didn't have facilities and all that. But I think we sort of have many of the state-of-art labs now. How did climate change happen? It's because of the technology right? So how is climate change going to be combated? It's going to be because of the technology. You may bring in any amount of policies, clean development mechanism, joint implementation, but after all, implementation of what? Of technology. After all, clean development mechanism is projects where they're putting up technology.
Now, another panelist today, Chen Wang, director of China's National Center for Nanoscience and Technology, said he and Ganesh represent the real work being done on the ground in emerging countries to help combat climate change. He said no one wants to breathe dirty air. He said there is a way to reduce energy consumption in urban areas and increase it for the needy and more poor rural areas of China. He was quick to point out the U.S. consumption per capita is 2 to 3 times what it is in China, despite China's growing emissions. Tyler?
Well, Dee, let's talk about these areas because these are poor rural villages in India and China. So what exactly is the energy efficiency and the technology we're talking about in these difficult to reach areas?
Well, the Indian Institute of Technology is working on a very interesting technology that's called a solar parabolic light receiver. And that's a self-contained piece of equipment that would go into these poor rural villages where they don't even have transmission lines, and that would provide power to certain areas. Now, that's just a step below distributed generation, which, as you know, is smaller generation that does require some transmission. Now, David Irwin Halliday, he's the founder of Light Up the World, was there, and he said energy development is the cornerstone to economic development. And if we can develop energy in those poor rural areas, efficient energy, then we'll be ahead of the game. He said, for example, the wattage on a Game Boy that we use here in the United States could power an entire house in one of the poor rural villages.
Yeah, almost an entirely different paradigm in terms of energy usage. All right,
exactly.
Dee Bombani, thank you
Tyler.
very much.